Unsteady breathing. Choked sob. Swallowed too late. A hand slams against stone and skin splits further across bruised knuckles. Fresh droplets of blood spearing across the wall. Another blow. And another. A boy on his knees in the dark. Prayer spills from him in fragments, half whispered, half wept. Words stumbling over each other, as though he can still force meaning into what was done, what might still be being done. Another strike against the wall. 1,000 self-condemnations, thought, whispered, and repeated at every waking moment for what felt like a lifetime. I should have kept silent. I should have died there. These are the thoughts which keep returning, the ones he can never truly escape, the ones that come out in the dark, when there are no explosions, no yelling, no screaming to drown them out. But there were others as well, ones that could never be stifled, not by artillery, not by the roar of engines, not by battle cries or dying screams, not even when the blast was so close and so violent they scorched the hairs from his skin and turned the world white for a heartbeat. What did they do to them? How long did they suffer because of me? The boy had never known the truth of what became of them, never seen it, nor heard it spoken plainly, and that ignorance was its own cruelty, for his mind had always filled that silence for him. It imagined chains and blood. It imagined screaming. It imagined familiar faces, twisted until they became unrecognizable. It took the faces of those he cared for and fed them back to him in ruined forms, over and over, until guilt and imagination became almost indistinguishable. That was the torment of it. The weakness that had gnawed at Vander for years, before it was burned clean, judged, put to death. And now, those same questions rose once again in Castus's mind, as he knelt over the broken sister. What did they do to them? Was it a fate like this that the boy had feared for the taken? A fate so cruel, so far beneath all mercy, that death was not surrender, but the last purity left to claim. He felt disgust, rage, hatred, but also reverence for the sister, for her resolve, for the strength it must have taken to deny the xenos their final obscenity, for the will to choose death before allowing the abominations their ultimate victory. As these thoughts circled through his mind, Castus did not move. He simply remained there, kneeling before her, the weight of the sight having stirred small embers of a boy long dead. Then, at last, he reached for her, careful, delicate. Even now, in death, she was owed that much. His gauntlet closed around the hilt of the blade she had driven into herself. For a brief moment, he held it there, head bowed, the silence thick and absolute. Then he spoke, his voice low and measured. A prayer. Words of the Emperor. Words for the fallen. Words to place a soul beyond the reach of filth. He did not speak of pity, for there was no room for pity in this place, only recognition, reverence, and the cold fury reserved for abominations too profane to deserve another name. The prayer ended, and Castus drew the blade free, and laid that final fragment of her defiance aside with care. Then he rose, and soon fire washed over the chamber in purifying light, devouring shadow, cloth, and blood. It climbed across the sisters' remains and took them swiftly, reducing obscenity to ash before it could endure another moment longer. Castus stood and watched it burn, flames reflecting in the lenses of his helm. And beneath solemn words and the sacred fire, his hatred hardened. The sister was beyond their reach now, but whether the abomination was, Castus did not know. And that, more than anything, left a chain dragging behind him. What followed passed before him in a blur. The return to the city, the audience with the Carl, the feast. Castus was present through it all. He answered when spoken to. He stood when duty demanded it. But the chain remained. It dragged behind every word, behind every step, every moment that should have been given to the present. Because beneath it all, one question endured. Was it dead? So while the hall roared with life, some cold and silent part of him remained elsewhere. Until it came. A roar. A sound that tore through the feast like a blade through parchment. And in an instant, Castus was no longer burdened by reflection, but sharpened by it. His helm turned. Every lingering thought collapsed into purpose. And with that, two truths came at once. The first was cold, logical. They had been wrong. The abomination had not died in the village. It had endured, waited, and now it had chosen its moment well. The second burned hotter. For one hard, hateful instant, Castus felt the full weight of that knowledge settle into something almost welcome. He knew the danger, the disadvantage, the blood this ambush would surely demand. But the chain had found itself something to wrap around. That thing that had weighed on the edge of his thoughts was no longer a question, no longer some shadow that may have slipped beyond judgment. It was here, and in that instant, all the disgust, the rage, the old poison stirred by the abomination ceased to be weight. It became cold